Federal authorities and the National Guard are now being deployed on the West Coast. And we are also seeing on the West Coast as well too a 5.2 earthquake that just hit. Pretty significant. Let's dive into all the details here. All right, you can see here's a live feed from Ford Fisher. He is in Illinois right now, okay? And there are protests going on. This is happening across the country. We're also seeing right now Trump has ordered the U.S. National Guard and federal officials and authorities to Portland, and he's giving them, quote, full force if necessary, okay? We are also seeing from the Attorney General, she is authorizing extra protections and federal agents to be deployed to certain ICE facilities around the country, all right? So lots of stuff going on. We are even seeing the U.S. military preparing to hit targets inside of Venezuela, okay? And this earthquake just hit, all right? I said 5.2, all right? It was actually 5.1, sorry about that. That just hit outside of Oregon, all right? Actually not too far from Portland, where these guard deployments and federal official deployments are happening right now, all right? So a 5.1, there was tsunami worries at first, but there was no threat, all right? That's what authorities said. That's what the National Tsunami Alert System said for the U.S., that there's no threat for tsunamis. And this is significant though, right? This is along the Cascadia Subduction Zone, and we've been waiting for a big one to potentially hit this region, and this could even be a, quote, foreshock, which is a earthquake that happens before an even bigger one, okay? It kind of opens up the pathways and opens up the network for these plates to move and have an even bigger earthquake, all right? So we'll get into more details of that in just a second, but I wanted to get this announcement here from President Trump. It says, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also authorizing full force if necessary. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, so he's authorizing full force and deploying federal and National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon, all right? And there's already clashes going on. You can see here, this is outside an ICE facility in Illinois. They were deployed, they were released from the gates and cleared people out that were protesting outside of the facility because they were starting to get rowdy, things like that. And they are worried that there's going to be attacks on these facilities, okay? So they are trying to make a perimeter and keep people away from right up against the gates, especially after last week where there was a incident at one of these facilities. All right, there was actually a rooftop shooting that happened in Texas at a ICE facility, and they're trying to prevent anything like that from happening again. All right, so they're on high alert. This is in Illinois. All right, we're also going to look at some pictures from Portland in just a second, but you can see here, this is also what Attorney General Pam Bondi said. She said, I have witnessed a continued onslaught of violence perpetuated against ICE officers across our country. The Department of Justice will not stand by idly in the face of such lawlessness. At my direction, I am deploying DOJ agents to ICE facilities and wherever ICE comes under siege to safeguard federal agents, protect federal property, and immediately arrest all individuals engaged in any federal crime. It says, pursuant to President Trump's recent executive action, I am also instructing the Joint Terrorism Task Force across the country to disrupt and investigate all entities and individuals engaging in acts of domestic terrorism, including the repeated acts of violence and obstruction against federal agents. The Department of Justice will seek the most serious available charges against all participants in these criminal mobs, including conspiracy offenses, assault offenses, civil disorder offenses, and terrorism offenses. While these never-ending attacks are designed to break our will, they will only strengthen our resolve to complete the work begun. To that end, I have directed the FBI, DEA, ATF, and USMS to accelerate our efforts alongside the Department of Homeland Security to locate, apprehend, detain, prosecute, and remove all illegal aliens present in the country. The rule of law will prevail. Okay, so that's what the Attorney General Pam Bondi is warning of, and this is a coordinated effort from the federal government. They're deploying massive amounts of federal resources to overwhelm the riots or agitators or protesters even that are outside of these facilities. Okay, some people are just protesting, some people are agitating and getting people riled up, and some people are actively committing crimes, destroying things, being very antagonizing, egging people on, so there are levels to the people that are there, but the response typically ends up to the most extreme thing. Okay, so if there's people destroying property and making threats, things like that, then they're going to respond to these with federal force and authorities. And if you are in these areas or these cities where these things are happening, make sure you are staying away, all right? Unless you're documenting it, you're reported on these things, try to stay away and be prepared, be ready, all right? It's one of these things too, it's like a double-edged sword where you don't want the military on the streets, all right? We don't want just like a police state where the military has to handle everything and we're just like cracking skulls and cracking down on everything. We really don't want that, okay? America's supposed to be free and open, but at the same time, when things like this are happening, it leaves little to no choice for federal authorities or the National Guard. What are they supposed to do? All right, there's really nothing. They have no choice. They have to do something. They have to respond and protect themselves, and that's what they're doing. All right, so it's one of these things where you have to kind of have the response to get law and order back in place, but you also just don't want to see the solution to everything is just deploying the National Guard to every big city. All right, it's one of these things it's happening, and hopefully it helps and works, and it seems like it's working in certain cities, certain areas, but it's also just one of these things we shouldn't have to live like this, right? It shouldn't be so bad. Sorry, there's a mosquito flying around in here or something. It shouldn't be so bad where that's just how we have to live, right? Where there's troops on the streets with weapons and things like that. We really don't want to just have to live in a society like that, and it's a slippery slope. And it's kind of been engineered, honestly, over the past few years and allowed to happen, and these things to really fester and get really bad. Like certain issues, immigration has been allowed to get so bad that now the pendulum's swinging back, and the response to fix it is now very intense, right, and militarized, because there's been such a overwhelming influx of people into the country, overwhelming certain cities and social services, things like that. And now there's a overwhelming response to fix it. Okay, it's one of these things where this has been in motion for a long time, right? And now we're seeing the pendulum swinging the other way, and the consequences of the past 4 years, right? So lots of stuff going on, and it's one of those things, we don't want to see it, but it's kind of the only option at this point. And it says here, the U.S. military is preparing for strikes on targets inside Venezuela as well too, right? They've been amassing the U.S. Navy ships. Okay, there's even been like quasi black ops happening, right? Certain ships off the coast of Venezuela and Central America and South America, where these very suspicious ships are showing up, and people believe some of them are even a part of the U.S. military or U.S. military contractors. Okay, so there's a lot of assets right now essentially just like surrounding Venezuela, okay, and they are in place to make a strike, and there's been no real give from Maduro. Okay, he is the contested leader of Venezuela right now. He technically did not win the elections, but he has not stepped down, and he's staying in power essentially with these certain gangs and groups that are protecting him and helping him, right? And these groups are the ones primarily that are trafficking and sending these illegal substances, these deadly substances, into the United States, where every year it's over 100,000 people are dying from things like fentanyl and related substances. Okay, so very serious problem. This is an attack on our country. Imagine if there's 100,000 people a year dying from a war. Okay, and so the response is going to be big. All right, they want them to stop, and they don't want Maduro in there. All right, whether you agree with that or not, that's the plan right now, is to get Maduro out of there, and they're going to start making strikes inside of Venezuela if he doesn't back down. All right, I want you guys to listen to this really quick, and then we'll talk more about it. All right, so the video's not working, but let's just read it here. It says, U.S. military officials are drawing up options that target traffickers inside of Venezuela and strikes within the country's border that could potentially begin in a matter of weeks, 4 sources told NBC News. Those sources are 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning and 2 other sources familiar with the discussions. They spoke on conditions of being anonymous because they're not authorized to speak about it publicly. Striking inside of Venezuela would be another escalation in Trump's military campaign against alleged targets and its stance towards Venezuela's government. All right. There's also a lot of oil in Venezuela as well too. It goes on to say, in recent weeks, the U.S. military struck at least 3 boats from Venezuela, allegedly carrying traffickers and substances that could threaten Americans. This is what President Trump said on Truth Social. It says the administration has not provided evidence that there were substances on those boats, but an official in the Dominican Republic, alongside one from the U.S. Embassy there, did say at a press conference Sunday that they were found in the water after one strike, right? And I believe I saw the video on multiple ones, and it looked like the boat was filled with giant bricks of stuff, right? I mean, we know what the stuff looks like. It was taped up, wrapped up bricks of you know what, all right? So it's pretty obvious. There were like dozens. The entire boat, the bottom of it, the center was just filled with these bricks. So I mean, it's pretty obvious what they were doing. And you can see here, it says the strikes inside Venezuela could happen in the next several weeks, but the president has not approved anything yet. The 4 people said. 2 of them and an additional official familiar with the discussion said that the U.S.'s recent military escalation is in part a result of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro not doing enough, in the administration's view, to stop the flow of illegal substances out of his country. See, he's kind of like a kingpin or a leader. He's almost like a gang leader, essentially, / president, Okay, so he really runs a lot of these operations. It's like one of his country's main industries that they export now, right? They rely heavily on oil. Venezuela has very rich oil reserves. That's where they get most of their money primarily, because their economy has been pretty bad, pretty up and down, a lot of inflation, a lot of problems monetarily, right? So most of their economy is oil based, and these substances that they're selling to other countries and pushing across the world, all right, this is one of their main industries, and they really want to, whether you agree or not, this is just the game plan, they really want to get this guy out of there in Venezuela. And I can see, honestly, both sides. It's like, well, if it's this country, we shouldn't be doing regime change. But at the same time, he's a contested leader, and he's kind of like at semi-war with the United States. So it's kind of, I kind of understand both sides here. And something needs to stop, right? He either needs to stop and change, or they, maybe they're gonna have to force him one way or another. And it seems like they're kind of like letting this leak out to let him know too. This is like a public warning to Maduro to say, hey, we're gonna start doing this in the next few weeks, so you have like 2 more weeks to change things and stop doing this. We need to see some kind of change, and you need to order these organizations, these gangs, to stop, right? Because he could do that, because he's a big beneficiary. He's like the one that authorizes it, and he gets a cut of a lot of these deals. So I think it's more of a public warning for him as well too. That's why they're kind of allowing this to be leaked out into the public. And if you remember, just a few days ago as well too, the Secretary of War ordered a quote urgent meeting that's going to be happening this Wednesday in a few days for all the top U.S. generals and officials. Okay, so it could be related to this. This could be it. It could be something bigger, where they're positioning them and getting them ready for a potential global war involving Russia and China. It could be something much bigger, and they don't want to share the communications over any type of back channels because they could be compromised, and they want to know exactly who had access to what information, right? I think that's the main reason they want them all in the same place, is just for security purposes for the plan that they are announcing. But this could be a part of it. All right, they could just do massive strikes in Venezuela for a week straight or something like that, or the next few weeks or months. Who knows? This could be the start of something big, and they might want to have their generals on high alert and all on the same page in case there are responses, okay? Because Venezuela is relatively close allies with Russia, okay? So we could see them assist and even back up Venezuela if there was attacks inside the country. All right, it's one thing to attack a boat in international waters that's not even like a military boat, but it's another thing to attack inside of Venezuela's own borders and start hitting targets. So who knows? We could see other countries even get involved. Maybe they want to have everyone on the same page for phase 2, right? After they hit Venezuela, what's going to happen next? I don't know, but they're preparing for something big, and this is definitely one of the things they've been preparing for. All right, so let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you guys are staying safe, staying prepared, staying stocked up, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and I just think it's kind of ironic and crazy that Trump's ordering the military to Portland, and then we have this 5.2 earthquake, right? I think it's a sign, a warning sign of maybe bigger things to come here, okay? And there's been studies for megaquakes that hit the Cascadia Subduction Zone, and they are worried that the entire plate here, right, see this line here, they're worried that the eastern half where the land is could subduct even further, drop down even further, potentially up to 1,000 feet. All right, there's been studies done that a big earthquake could cause 1,000-foot subduction drop in this area. All right, and think about it, if all this land here dropped 1,000 feet down, it's going to flood with water, and that displacement initially is going to cause a big tsunami as well too. And then the water is going to it could completely change the geography of the west coast here. All right, so hopefully not. That's a rare event, okay, but it's also an event that could happen, right? So it's rare for this to be happening in the military on U.S. streets in Portland, okay? So be prepared, be stocked up, be ready. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope you have big blessings for your life and your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.